Good morning, Cynthia here with the Nameless Homestead, and today we're going to be talking about all things goat nutrition. Now, before you click away, I know that this is not the most exciting topic on goat care that there is out there, but it is probably one of the most important foundational elements of having a healthy, happy, successful herd. So stick around. Today we're going to be going over 6 key factors as it pertains to goat nutrition. These are hay, minerals, grain, calcium, phosphorus ratio, browse, and dry lot versus pasture, which of course is a hot button topic. So today we're out in the barn and we're going to be going over exactly what you need to know in order to have a healthy, happy herd. Probably the most important thing that you can do for your goats is get them a nice quality source of hay. Hay should make up the bulk of their diet. They need hay specifically over pelleted grains and anything else for the long stem fiber. Long stem fiber in the form of hay and browse keep the digestive systems moving and keep the rumen's active, functioning, happy, fermenting digestion systems. But what kind of hay should you get for your goats? This is probably one of my most frequently asked questions. I personally go for a good quality orchard grass, but not everyone, based on where you are in the world, can access specific kinds of hay. Some people have access to alfalfa, some timothy, some brome, some orchard grass. There are lots of different kinds of hay out there to choose from. The best hay that you can get for your goats is something as close to 16% protein as you can get. This is usually a legume hay. Alfalfa is a fantastic choice for most goats. There is a lot of old wives' tales out there saying that alfalfa will actually cause urinary calci and cause bladder stones in goats and isn't great for wethers. But this is an old wives' tale, and we'll go over why when we get to the mineral portions of this video. If you're unsure about the quality of your hay tests are available in most states at your local agricultural department and in local colleges. I'm lucky enough to live close to Washington State University, and they do a lot of testing on their campuses in their large animal school. They do everything from fecal tests to hay tests. This is a very inexpensive test to have done and is absolutely worth the price so that you know exactly what the makeup is of your hay so you can balance out the rest of their minerals and nutritional needs through additives like mineral supplements and grain. It is also very important for goats, unlike some other animals like cows, to make sure that it is high quality hay. You don't want feeder hay for your goats. Hay that's been exposed to the elements, that hasn't been stored in a protected way, or that has mold or high dust. Goats have very sensitive systems and they need generally horse quality hay. A lot of people will advertise goat quality hay, and usually it's bottom of the barrel because of the misconception that goats can pretty much eat anything. So buyer beware in that regard. When you check hay, make sure it is free of mold, that it hasn't been stored outside, that it isn't wet, and that it isn't very dusty. You should always smell like freshly cut grass. Oh my gosh. Thanks for that. So it's good minerals. It's very yummy. Yeah. Very tasty. Loose minerals are another very important part of taking care of your animal's needs. Not everything an animal needs can be gotten through just one source, and a lot of hay and a lot of pastures isn't perfectly balanced for a goat's needs. A loose mineral is basically like taking your daily multivitamin for goats. It will have salt and calcium and phosphorus and copper and selenium and all of those wonderful things that goats need to produce the best quality milk, the best quality meat, and in general live their happiest, healthiest lives. Now that being said, not all minerals are created equal. My favorite mineral is Purina for goats. They've reformulated recently in the last year or two, and they now are supplying plenty of copper for goats. You can get loose minerals through stores like Tractor Supply, North 40, or maybe even your local agricultural groups or grain mills. But the important thing to take into consideration is how much copper and how much calcium and how much phosphorus it contains. Copper should be at least 2,000 parts per million. Goats have a propensity to be low in copper, and being low in copper can really increase their likelihood of falling victim to internal parasites. It also affects coat health and a bunch of other things as well. A lot of goat minerals out there have less than 1,000 parts per million, and it's not enough, leading you to have to constantly top up with boluses, which is very obnoxious. So if you can get your hands on those red bags of Purina goat minerals, that will last you a long time and your goats will thank you for it. Now, blocks are also another option. This is out here for the alpacas and for the pony, not so much the goats. A lot of people use mineral blocks for their animals. The problem is that sucker's mostly salt, and goats don't have such rough tongues that it's easy for them to lick and utilize those mineral blocks the way that cows can and other classes of livestock. So free choice loose minerals is definitely your best bet. And that brings us to calcium and phosphorus ratios, or mineral ratios in general. This is a very, very important, probably the most important thing to consider when it comes to creating a nutrition and feed program. Hey, no fighting, children. No fighting, Pucky. This is probably the most important thing to get right when it comes to animal nutrition. Calcium and phosphorus, when in balance, are great. There's nothing really to say about it. However, when it's out of balance, it can cause major issues. A lack of calcium in nursing does can cause milk fever, and an imbalanced calcium and phosphorus ratio can be really bad for male goats, especially wethers or castrated male goats. When your calcium and your phosphorus ratios are out of balance, the minerals can then bind in the bladder and cause urinary stones. It used to be thought that urinary stones, or urinary calci as it's referred to in goats, was purely from calcium. And so people would refrain from feeding their goats things like alfalfa, which is high in calcium. But the truth is that it's when there's too much phosphorus compared to the calcium that then the binding occurs and the stones are formed. You want your calcium and phosphorus ratio between a 2-to-1 and 4-to-1 ratio. 2 parts calcium to 1 part phosphorus, up to 4 parts calcium, 1 part phosphorus. If you make sure through hay testing and paying attention to the label on your grain products as well as your mineral products, and you make sure that all of those things are in line, there should not be any reason why you come into urinary calci issues with your bucks or your wethers, or milk fever in your does. However, nothing is foolproof, so I would definitely suggest having a well put together goat emergency medicine kit, which I will absolutely link to, and have things like calcium supplements for milk fever and medications on hand to help out your bucks and wethers as well. And I go over all of that in that video. You want some grain, sweet girl? Oh, you're knocking it over. Oh, and look who else wants grain. No thank you, rudeness. Gosh, I can't wait till we can fix up this barn. Hey, you're a bad girl, stop it. As you can tell, goats really love their grain. Grain is fed in addition to hay and minerals to supplement protein and keep weight on and keep condition on goats. A lot of goats don't even need any grain at all. A lot of goats do great on pasture or hay or minerals just alone. But for lactating goats, pregnant goats, or goats that are just not the easiest of keepers, grain is a great addition to any feeding regimen. You want to make sure that you get a goat-specific grain, especially if you're new to this whole thing. I don't get a goat-specific grain. I get a grain that is a special mix, but meets all of my requirements. And those requirements are that it's balanced in calcium and phosphorus, and that it's a 16% protein grain. This is also something you should be feeding very limited. My goats only get a few cups of it per day, morning and evening. This is something that you don't want to just dump a bag of and free feed. Goats, when they're given unlimited access to high amounts of nutrition that are in grain, can bloat, which unfortunately we've seen before, and die. So it's very important to keep grain very limited. They will try to hork it down like actual goldfish and will eat and eat and eat until they make themselves sick. So keep it locked up in a safe place. You also have the option of getting medicated or unmedicated grain. I would not suggest that anyone use medicated goat grain unless they are living in an area where it's extremely likely that they're going to come down with cocky. Cocky is a parasite that can take over an animal's digestive system and cause diarrhea and eventually kill the animal if it's not treated properly. Some people try to do a preventative measure by feeding goats medicated grain, but like with all things, constant over-medication and frequent use of medications can cause resistances to build up. So my personal philosophy is don't medicate for something until there's a need to medicate for something. Goat-specific grain is easy to find at your local feed stores. And if you really want to stretch the budget, you can actually have your own personal goat grain mixed or look for mixes directly from grain mills if you happen to have them near you. Well, hello there, Pucky Puck. You're such a handsome boy. Hello, king of the herd. Oh, we need to take care of that scur, mister. We got a time for some trimming. Who wants to go on a walk? Goaties! Goaties! Come on. Let's go on a walk and get some browse. Hi, sweet girl. You want to show us how goats love browse and branches? Oh yes, that's the best stuff. That's the favorite stuff, huh? Goats love browse, and by browse, I mean things like this. Pine trees, deciduous trees, bushes, tops of tall grasses, and brush in general. Goats are the best brush hog out there. They are not great at trimming lawns, as we've talked about in the 5 things I wish I would have known before I got goats video. That is definitely a wives' tale. Goats prefer tender greens and brambly things to eat. Browse is a fantastic way to get nutrition as nature intended. If you have the ability to give your goats access to acreage and browse, that is probably one of the best things you can do for them. But not everyone can do that, and that's fine as well. One thing, however, to look out for when it comes to giving your animals access to acreage and browse is to look out for toxic plants. Even ponderosa pine, which you saw me feeding Paige just now, can be unhealthy for goats at significant levels during pregnancy. However, at moderate levels, it can actually be a fantastic way to naturally ward off parasites to a small degree. It's not going to take care of an actual parasite overload if one already exists, but frequent small amounts of ponderosa pine can help prevent an overload to begin with. You gonna come out and eat the trees? You'll notice on our trees that they've skirted about 5 to 6 feet up the trees all along our property where the goats have had access to them. This is actually another benefit of allowing your animals to browse your land. This is a natural fire prevention. Well, once I take care of the dead limbs, that is. By taking care of a lot of the limbs on the lower level, if a brush fire comes through your area, it's less likely to ignite the trees. And in the world we currently live in, we all know how bad fires have been lately, especially on the West Coast. Which leads to the last point that I wanted to make today, which is dry lot versus pasture. A dry lot is when you have your animals pinned up in a pasture that's small enough that it becomes overgrazed and free of all grasses to graze in. This can be a positive thing or a negative thing, and it's often considered a hot button topic. A lot of people out there, especially in the pet livestock world, feel like having your animals in a dry lot is cruel. But I hate to break it to you, the animals generally don't care at all, one way or the other. All a goat cares about is food and scratches and fresh water and a sunny patch to rest in. They're basically the cats of the livestock world. Racing pony, where are you gonna race to, racing pony? Goats really don't care one way or the other whether or not they have pasture or a dry lot. They're very easy animals to please, although they do both have their benefits and their drawbacks. The benefits to pasture is that there's a lot of free food there that you don't have to buy from the hay supplier. The drawback is with hay or with pasture, there's a much more likely chance that you're gonna have to control parasite issues. Beautiful lush pastures are wonderful and beautiful and lush, but all that wet grass grows parasites, whereas hay doesn't. So if parasites are a big concern where you live, having a dry lot where there's nothing to graze and nothing to eat off of the ground could benefit you. However, that is definitely the more expensive way to feed. When you have a dry lot, you also have to manage the dry lot. Manure does add up, and raking the pasture is not my favorite chore. All in all, the big takeaways here are free choice hay, free choice goat-specific loose minerals, limited grain for animals who need it, and plenty of fresh water. If you do those 3 things, you'll have a great foundation to having happy, healthy goats. I hope this video has been helpful to you all today. I hope that you learned something here. If you did learn something, comment down below. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave those down below as well. Or go into the description box of this channel and hook up with us on one of our other social media accounts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, you name it. And I'd love to hear from you and continue to grow this community full of people who already know this homesteading gig like the back of their hand, and newbies as well. Please, if you did like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, do the bell, all of those good things, and I'll see you guys next Sunday.